In this video, we're going to learn about alcohols. Alcohols are a group of organic compounds that have the functional group OH. The R represents a carbon chain of some length, whether it be one carbon chain like this or a two carbon chain like this. Doesn't really matter. The point is that it's a carbon chain, and then somewhere on it, you have an OH group attached to it. And that OH group is called a hydroxyl functional group. And that hydroxyl functional group is what gives the alcohol the characteristics that alcohols have, which we'll see in more detail later on. So the general formula for an alcohol, we can decipher it from this picture here, and you can do more practice problems, and you can see that it will probably match this over here. So here we have number of carbons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 carbons, H, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, like that, and then 1 O, like that. So it's almost like an alkane as long as there's no double bonds or triple bonds, but then you have an O in there. And then if it's cyclic, well, it's just 2 H's less than the one that's a chain. So you have 2N plus 2, and then over here you have 2N and then the O there. Alcohols are very diverse molecules. There's many types that exist. You can have what's called polyalcohols, which is essentially just an alcohol that contains many hydroxyl functional groups. So you can see it over here. This is a polyalcohol called glycerol. And you might be familiar with glycerol if you took some biology and studied triglycerides or fats. Then you can also have cyclic alcohols. So cyclic alcohols are basically just cyclical molecules with a hydroxyl group attached to it. And you can also have aromatic alcohols, which are alcohols that have a benzene ring and the OH on them. So very diverse molecules that functional group adds another layer of diversity, and also other characteristics that just the regular hydrocarbons don't have. So before we go into naming, I want to take a look at the different types of alcohols that exist. Alcohols can be classified based on primary, secondary, or tertiary. And the reason we classify alcohols in this way is because this does affect their reactivity quite a bit. So if you look at a primary alcohol, that's an alcohol where the OH is bonded to a carbon that's bonded to only one other carbon. So you can see here's the OH, here's the carbon, and here's the carbon chain. On the other sides, there's only H and H. Secondary alcohol is where you have an OH bonded to a carbon that's bonded to two other carbons. So these R's represent other carbon chains. And a tertiary alcohol is where you have an OH bonded to a carbon that's attached to three other carbons. So you can take a look at this example over here. This OH is attached to a carbon that's directly attached to one carbon only. So that's a primary alcohol. This OH over here is attached to a carbon that's attached to two carbons. So that's a secondary alcohol. And this OH is attached to a carbon that's attached to three carbons. So that's a tertiary alcohol. So what I'd recommend you do is that you pause the video and try to classify the alcohols below as either secondary, primary, or tertiary. And then when you have the answers, unpause and take a look to see if you're on the right path. So let's start with this one over here. Let's call this A. Let's find our OH group. So we have our OH group over here. The carbon is over here, and it's directly attached to 1, 2, 3 other carbons. That's a tertiary alcohol. Let's do B. So here's OH. This is the carbon it's attached to. It's attached to 1, 2 other carbons. That's a secondary alcohol. Here's the OH. Here's the carbon it's attached to. That carbon is attached to one other carbon directly. So that's a primary alcohol. And over here we have an OH. And this is the carbon it's attached to. This carbon is attached to one carbon directly. So that's a primary alcohol. So far we've seen what alcohols are. They contain the functional group OH. This is their general formula here if they're chain, and this is it if they're cyclic. There's a variety of different alcohol molecules that exist. You can have polyalcohols, you can have cyclic alcohols, or aromatic. And then we saw that alcohols can be classified based on being primary, secondary, or tertiary. And the reason we care about that is because that affects their reactivity in some way, which we'll see in more detail later on. So in our next video, we're going to take a look at how to name alcohols and dry alcohols. We'll take a look at the rules, and then afterwards we'll apply those rules in a variety of different practice problems where we have to name and we have to draw.